Welcome to Buckets. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm joined by Braxton Reynolds, and this is your Rookie of the Year deep dive for the 2024-25 absolute trash pile that is the Rookie of the Year. But with so much uncertainty about who's actually going to stand out from what is universally regarded as one of the worst draft classes of all time, guess what that means? Uncertainty. And uncertainty is always good for bettors. We'll give you a best bet from Braxton. I'll talk about why I don't have one. And then we'll kind of get into some details about looking at how to look at this award historically. And then we'll also look at this year's crop and why I just wind up being like, cannot choose the wine in front of them because, well, it's all pretty disgusting. As a reminder, you're going to want to check out youtube.com/The Action Network. You can check that out for all sorts of great stuff. Green Dot Daily. I'll be making appearances there starting next month for NBA season. You can check out all of our live shows. You got the Sunday Six Pack giving out picks every Wednesday for the NFL slate. You've got Brandon Anderson's episodes on the NFL. So much great content. You got Brian Fonseca covering the fights. And you want to check out the BBOC, Big Bets on Campus podcast on YouTube as well. They got their own YouTube channel. Just search for Big Bets on Campus on YouTube and you'll find it. Great stuff there. Maria Marino is going to be covering college basketball from the women's side. You've got Stuckey and Collins' college football podcast is legitimately one of the best sports podcasts out there. Like the level of depth and analysis is absolutely incredible. And then on Mondays they do the voicemails, which are just chef's kiss. But we're going to talk NBA Rookie of the Year today, Braxton. And so my approach for this one was a little bit different, is instead of kind of looking at the profiles of the guys, I wanted to look back and start here. When you have a class this universally regarded as garbage as this one is, what has the history of the award said? Because, look, I want to be clear on this. This is based off of like the perception that exists now. I always think draft class stuff is really funny because, like, I was looking back at, for research, I was like, all right, just Googled, like, what's the, like, worst NBA draft classes? And all of these articles will bring up classes that I remember as, like, no, they were thought to be pretty good at the time. They just wound up being really bad. So, like, these guys, like, all these guys could wind up being all-stars. Like, we could have, like, an amazing class coming out here. We don't know. Like, it's uncertain. But it is fair to say that the perception of this class is about as low as it could possibly get going in.
I mean, yeah, Risa Shea, first overall pick. You don't see that often, gotta say. There's no stud scorer. There's no guy where you're looking at it like, yeah, I'm happy my team won the lottery this year. I'm happy I got Paolo. I'm happy I got Chet. It just doesn't really exist in this class to me.
So I want to look back at some of the classes that have been as badly regarded. 2014 is one that was regarded as really bad, but like Wiggins was thought to be awesome in that class. Like he was like, there was a lot of hype about him at Kansas. And I owe Bill Self an apology because I was like, man, Bill Self just like mismanaged him in terms of like opening up what he's capable of. Turns out, no, he just wasn't capable of that much. NBA champion, Andrew Wiggins. There are three classes that I did identify, and it is interesting because all of these go a little bit outside of some of the trends that we've seen with where they're selected. So if we go back to 2006, that's the Andrea Bargnani class, to give Knicks fans a little bit of PTSD. Aldridge was number 2, and LaMarcus was really well regarded coming out. Like, I actually thought that was a really good pick. I thought LMA was going to be a good pro, and he was. But Adam Morrison was 3rd. Yikes. And in that class, Brandon Roy wins at number 6. And obviously, like, if Roy had stayed healthy, then he goes down as one of the better, draft picks, not of LeBron CP3 level, but probably in like the next tier because he was absolutely phenomenal, but he got hurt. 2013, that's the Anthony Bennett draft. Like, that one's the one that you can really kind of single as like the most analogous to this one, where Bennett basically has like a good NCAA tournament, winds up going number 1, and is one of the worst draft picks. Like a true bust. Like Kwame Brown wound up having like a pretty good career. A lot of guys that went number 1 and were not good have gone on and had like pretty okay careers. Like DeAndre Ayton's still making money and will probably be in the league another 5-6 years. In that class, Michael Carter Williams won it at number 11. So we've got a number 6 pick winning it and a number 11. Then finally in 2020, that obviously COVID impacted Anthony Edwards. This is 2021 rather, the 2020 draft class. COVID impacted that season. Ant goes number 1. Ant at the time was like, yeah, he came in with hype, but because everything was so messed up with COVID, there wasn't as much hype on Ant. LaMelo wound up winning that one at number 3, and obviously LaMelo is like a very hype prospect. So you kind of have like a little bit more hype at the top, but those are kind of the classes. But what we do see is no number 1s, no number 2s in those 3 selections. Now it's a tiny sample, but I kind of wanted to start there, Braxton, from the idea of in a class that is this lowly hyped, we probably want to look down the board a little bit and not just be like it's one of these top 3 pick kind of guys.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the top 10, they were, they weren't one tier per se, but you could almost look at them as 1 or 2 tiers, pretty much. I mean, they were pretty similar prospects from a talent perspective. So I wouldn't be focusing top 3 here. I think even up to top 15, you could just open it up and see who you like because they're pretty similar.
All right, so let's give your best bet, and we'll give you some criteria, and I'll explain why I don't have one. Go ahead.
Okay, so Zach Edey can find it at 6-1. This is my only guy that I'm looking at, and here's kind of the case for him. Starting center for the Grizzlies, they have Brandon Clark and Aldama. Those guys are good role players, but they kind of need Edey in the lineup. And Jaren can't be a center. He's a forward. He can't rebound. He's best as a roamer. He's just not going to be used as a center much. So I think Edey can hit that 25, 26 minutes per game. That has been, the general criteria because every winner of this award post-merge has played 26 minutes per game. So that's going to be huge for him. That's a big advantage for him because not many guys are starting in this draft. It's a lot of role players coming off the bench, but Edey kind of has this advantage built in for him. And you look at who he's replacing, Steven Adams, he played 26, 27 minutes per game. That's exactly what we want for this award. So that's a big positive to me right away. He's pretty much guaranteed playing time. And then you look at, other criteria, points, rebounds, assists. He's going to get a lot of those because 10 plus rebounds per game, right off the bat, it should be easy for him. He's 7'3", 7'4", 300 pounds, a lot of playing time. That's just 10 plus rebounds, 9 plus rebounds waiting to happen. And then defensively, I think the advanced metrics are going to look good for him. The rim protection, the rebounding, all of that's going to go in his way. And then finally, I think that they want to recreate that Jaren Adams pairing. They had a lot of success for that. You look at net rating, 9.1 net rating in 2022 with Jaren and Steven on the court, and then 15.6 net rating in 23. So I think that making that pairing happen again with Edey, with the stats, with the minutes, that's pretty much my front runner. Besides that, Reed Shepherd's going to be good from impact, but where are the minutes? Where are the stats? I'm not betting Sarr. I don't think he's developed offensively. And then a bunch of guys like Connect, Carrington, they're not going to get any usage, I don't think.
When I started this process, I had a bunch of names that I was like, I like this guy, and I like this guy, and I like this guy. And then we started getting into the criteria of who wins this award, and I was like weeding them out. And it's like DPOY, where it was like the Wings, and I was like, well, I can't do the him. And I was like, well, I don't think the Heat are going to win 50 games, so I can't do Bam. And so I'm annoyed that as somebody that loves to bet preseason awards futures, there are very few. I'm not going to have one now. I'm going to wait for preseason. I have to see the rotations. I have to see specifically some of the starter stuff, which we'll get to. Talk to me a little bit about what you found on the historical markers for the thresholds that you need to get to historically to win this award.
Yeah, so 26 minutes per game for every winner post-merge. And that's 50 winners because I know the math is not mathing there since 1977, but we've had ties. We've had 2 ties, I think, for Rookie of the Year winners. So 26 minutes per game. And then PRAs, points plus rebounds plus assists. We've had 23 plus in 48 of 50 winners.
Okay.
And then 15 of those have to be points, pretty much. And finally, efficiency does not matter. Throw it out the window, because we've had 28 of 25 or 50 winners were positive in relative true shooting percentage. Yep. 22 of 50 were negative. It just doesn't really matter that much. But for this class, because guys aren't getting volume and that kind of impacts their stats, you might need an efficient guy to kind of get to those thresholds, because 9 field goals attempts per game, low efficiency, it's just not going to get you to where you want to be.
Right. Braxton mentioned this on the minutes front. A surprisingly low number of players as rookies play 25 minutes or more. If you go back and you go like year by year for guys that played enough games and guys that played 25 minutes or more in their rookie season, like there are lists. I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's like it's not nearly as many as you would think. And there were some years where I was like, wow, there's only a handful that got over that marker, and we might be at that this year. A couple thresholds from Brandon that I want to go ahead and throw out here, because Brandon's really great at this stuff. He had the 15 points per game marker too. 15 out of the last 22 Rookie of the Year winners led their class in points per game. So if we just want to narrow this down to who gets buckets, that's a pretty good answer. Is it like, if you have an idea of, I don't think he'll do anything else, but he's going to play 25 minutes or more, and he's going to lead this class in scoring, that's your person. That should probably be your selection. An interesting trend that I found, we see this with Most Improved, and we see this with Six-Man. There is, I think, what I would best describe as a creep of advanced analytics in the selection of the voters. I've said oftentimes that EPM, the reason that I'm always citing it, is not that it influences the voters, and I continue to believe that's true, but instead that it measures things that the voters reward. I do think things like BPM, the ones that are available on Basketball Reference, I think those are probably influencing voters a little bit more. And a good indication of that is, here's 2 stats. 8 out of the last 10 rookies of the year were number 1 in BPM among rookies with 25 minutes played per game. So you have this really strong selection here that 8 of the last 10 were number 1 in that category. When we go to EPM, 9 out of the last 10 were top 10 in EPM. If you're wondering, like, okay, is it better? How do I use this? It's an indicator that if you check those leaderboards for EPM, BPM, you can catch BPM at Basketball Reference, EPM is at Dunks and Threes, and we'll cite those all throughout the season on buckets. If you go and check out those leaderboards, and there's a rookie that is, it's got to be among rookies, but among rookies, that guy is top 10, and he is playing more and scoring more, again, that's probably the person to single out and identify. The market will have already adjusted on those types of things, but that's also going to give you better value rather than being like, well, I think this other guy might win. Well, okay, if he's outside of those categories, historically, that's not what's happened. Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to like you mentioned this, that there's just like not a lot of guys that you want to bet on for this award. And one of the other requirements, the criteria that I wanted to single out, was honestly this one. You need to start. This is a big deal, is that to get to 25 minutes a game, you need to start, because the coach will always, it's not just a matter of how good are you. Yes, sometimes guys close that don't start, but it's rare, and rookies are more often going to start than they are going to close. So in order for you to get over 25 minutes per game, you have to start, because the coaches are always going to want to return to the standard rotation that in the last 4 minutes of each half, they want their starters back on the floor together. You want that. That's supposed to be your best unit. You want that to work. If your starters are getting killed, it's not a good look, and you need continuity in order for it to work. So this is one of the, I think, is the key problems. Brogdon is the only rookie of the year to start fewer than 30 games. We have one exception in NBA history, and that's Malcolm Brogdon in a really weird year. LaMelo is the only one to start less than 40. He started 30, but that was in a 72-game season. So when we kind of extrapolate that, we're once again kind of getting into those same kind of categories here. So you need to identify somebody who's going to start. Now, a lot of these guys may not start initially, but they might start later. and that could get them over this number of they started more than half the season, and that got their minutes up to 25 or more, and they wind up scoring enough to get into that category. Your best bet's Edey. Let's start there. He's a favorite on the board, and I get it. I think he should be the favorite. I may just bet him because it may just be like default, because it does feel like Edey might just wind up racking up like 2 hook shots a game, 2 fouls drawn, a couple of putbacks, and that gets him like within range. And his rebounding numbers should be really high, especially with how much Jaren is not. That's not a strength for Jaren. My only concern on the scoring front is like he's got Ja, he's got Bane, he's got Jaren. Those mouths have to be fed. They have other scorers like Gigi Jackson, who'll be back by midseason. You've got Vince Williams. You've got Luke Kennard. You do have other scorers on the team that are gonna take up some of that. And so, like, I think there will be nights when, like, a lot of nights when Edey's line is like 8 and 10, but the rebounds might honestly get him there to a large degree, like help him out a lot with kind of bumping over. But if somebody does score, the only thing is it's going to have to be one of those things where if his scoring isn't, if he's not, I have a hard time seeing him averaging like 18, right? Like I think 15 is like maybe the max for him, but also I think his ceiling's pretty high. So that's like my concern here is just that I think that the floor for Edey is very high. The ceiling I think is very low from a scoring standpoint. But when I look around, he may be one of the only guys that I know is going to start the entire season, and that's why I think there's probably some value there.
I think relatively his ceiling is low, but who else has a high ceiling for scoring? Not really many guys in this class. You're going to have the rebounds. You're going to have the PRAs, I think, which is going to help him the most. And like you said, the minutes per game, the start, it's so important to me. And he's also physically ready, too. At his kind of size, he's going to get easy points. He's going to be ready for, NBA defenses. He's going to get good passes because he's so tall. He can get assists because he's so tall. So I think that from a numbers perspective, I think if you're betting one guy, it would be Edey to rack up the most PRAs. And I think that's the best way to bet this for this class, honestly, because there's just not many guys who are going to be monster scorers.
Among the guys that I really like that I've had to be like, nope, probably not. Among them is Reed Sheppard, who's at 6-1. I think Sheppard's like the best player in this class, but he's got Jalen Green's very inefficient ass in front of him, and that's a problem. Now, it wouldn't shock me if we get into training camp and Jalen Green is benched and they're starting Reed Sheppard. Like, I would not be surprised if it's like, yeah, we're gonna, like, they ran Reed Sheppard with the ones. Reed Sheppard ran with the ones again. Yeah, we're gonna try, like, second preseason game, we're gonna try out Reed Sheppard and give Jalen the night off with the starters. And then by the time we come around the season, it's like, yeah, the Reed Sheppard is the starting 2 guard. I just think he's going to be better than Jalen. I think that there's still tension with Jalen and Ime Udoka over play style and a number of other things and the inconsistency. If Jalen Green comes into camp and he is just an altogether better player and he just dominates, then that's that. And Reed Sheppard's is going to come off the bench. And he's not going to get to 25 minutes, and he's not going to get there. And so I can't bet Reed Sheppard right now, even though I think he's the best player if I had to bank on one player to be the best out of this class, like long term, the best career, I would definitely bank on Reed Sheppard.
Yeah, well, his advanced metrics, they're going to look the best out of anyone, I think. And if I knew he was getting even just like 18 to 20 minutes per game, I think that would be my guy, even though it doesn't really fit with the mold.
Yeah.
But I just kind of see him getting 14, 13 minutes per game. There's so many young prospects on Houston that need playing time. It's just going to block him. And I'm not really happy about getting him at 6-1 too. That's another thing. I think that I would be willing to take more shots if the odds on these weren't terrible. They're all like 6-1, 7-1, 8-1. It's just not worth it to take a shot. Like Dalton Connect, good sleeper, maybe. I'm not taking him at 11-1. It's just not good enough.
Modest Bazelis was going to be my guy. After his summer league performance, he looked like he had that dog in him. it looked like the Bulls really recognized that they have this. They're like, you were very astute in saying that the Bulls were going to go young. I was like, there's no way. Reinsdorf's never going to do that. They're always going to chase the playoff revenue. And then they let DeRozan go. Now, they still have Levine and Vucevic on the roster. Casey Johnson over at NBC Chicago had an article that actually outlined what he thinks the rotation is going into camp. And he doesn't have Bazelis starting. It's Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine at the 3, Patrick Williams at the 4, and Vooch. That makes a lot of sense from a money committed standpoint. Those are the guys that they've paid money to. And so if Bazelis is coming off the bench, that's obviously going to hurt him. Now, by midseason, LaVine and Vooch could be gone, and that opens up a spot. Williams moves to 3, Bazelis slides into the 4. They play Jalen Smith at the 5. I like the Bulls a lot better, but they're still probably going to wind up tanking, and we're in a good spot there with Bazelis. However, I also can't bet him because just as I was about to be like, yeah, I think I'm going to bet the Bazelis, I was like, wait, he's G League Ignite. I've done this before. I did this with Scoot Henderson, and I did this with Jalen Green. I did it with both of those guys. Now, it could just be like there's a lot of the execs I've talked to in the league, the personnel people I've talked to in the league have been like very mixed on whether or not G League Ignite is actually a problem as far as like the translation of the NBA. And most of them are like, those guys can definitely go on and have great careers. But I just can't dispute that both Jalen Green and Scoot Henderson not only underperformed expectations after really good summer leagues, but wildly underperformed expectation. And I'm spooked enough to where that gets me off of Bazelis, even though you're getting you're still only getting 9-1 there on him. And so that's not going to be a guy that I'm going to go in on. Do you have an opinion on the G League Ignite stuff?
I think it's too early, but right now I would generally stay away. For Bazelis too, the spacing's going to be terrible around him, and he's not really a guy that can shoot from three-point range at high volume and be a decent clip. He's going to be a guy that loves to post up, loves to isolate, pull up jumpers inside the arc, and against spacing like that, it's just not going to be good. I also think that I know efficiency doesn't matter, like I said, but he's not going to get the volume to where it doesn't matter. I think it will matter in that he's going to get 8-9 shots a game, and I'm just not seeing the point total. I'm not seeing the rebound, the assist, the minutes. I think that maybe if Vooch and LaVine are gone, it could be worth a look, but by then the odds will be slashed, I bet, by the books.
Alex Sarr, yikes is all I have on the notes for this one. Look, if you want to bet him, I get it. Number 2 pick, he's going to get the minute. He's going to start, so he qualifies there. Maybe he's much better than Summer League, but for the worst team in the league, for a guy that looked absolutely lost in Summer League, I can't get there. We may be in the first week of the season, and all the value on Sarr might be gone, but I just don't want to bet it right now. Dalton Connect, I think, was another one where I was like, ooh, right? Lakers bump, ooh. Not projected to start. Like, their starters are going to be D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. Is Connect going to get enough minutes under JJ Redick? Maybe. Like, is he going to get enough shots? That's hard to say. Like, even if LeBron sets him up enough, in the minutes where LeBron's not on the floor, who's setting him up? D'Angelo Russell? Probably not. So, like, I have a hard time with Dalton Connect on this one as well.
Is he going to survive too? Like, he can't play defense right now. So that doesn't fly as a rookie in the NBA.
The two really interesting ones are Stephon Castle, and the next one I'll get to in a minute, which probably would be my best bet, is the next guy. Castle, I think, picks a lot of the categories here where he may just like look awesome, especially a guy known for his defense is not who you want here. But there's also a strong possibility if CP3's got to miss time and he's just like killing it with assists, maybe he gets there on the PRA numbers. Maybe it's like 13 and 6, right? And that's probably, that might be good enough with this class, with him just lobbing it up to Wemby. I think that there's a lot of people that think that Castle is one of the better players here. I'm not sure if I love the profile of how he looks, especially with the jumper and the question marks there. You mentioned the efficiency doesn't matter. I don't know if he's going to get the usage opportunities, but like, he's a really good player on a team that's probably going to be on national TV more. That's going to get a lot of attention. Castle's probably not a bad bet. It's not one I want, but I especially, one last thing here. I don't know if he's going to start. The projection right now, I think, is CP3, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson. maybe Keldon gets benched and Vassell moves to the 3 and Castle starts. But I don't think you can put that in pen. I think that's at best a pencil here right now. And I don't think we know going into camp whether Castle's going to start or not.
I don't know. I think Keldon could come off the bench. I think there's a possibility. If they want to establish that Castle-Wemby chemistry and they want his defense in the lineup, I think that he's probably the most probable to start besides Edey of the guys. And maybe Sarr too. I think those top 3, you can kind of check in for maybe starting. Otherwise, it's not good.
With how the Spurs approached last year, with how patient they were, like this is one of the things is like, Brandon's all in on the Spurs, and I get it, and he's got good logic, and Brandon wins a lot of bets, but I don't think the Spurs have the expectations that other people do for them. I don't think that the Spurs are approaching the season like we got to make the playoffs, or we're going to try and make the play-in tournament. I don't think they care about that. I think that they're going to approach the process the same way. And if they just look at it and say, Castle's not ready, when he's ready, he'll start, that could wind up impacting things. Because it may be one of those things where by the end of the season, Castle was starting, but he wound up starting less than 40 games. And that impacted things because he's not necessarily projected as like a scoring guard. Then there's this guy. The Hawks starters right now, you have to project as Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Clint Capella. You have to project it right now. DeAndre Hunter is so injury prone and has bounced in and out of favor so often in Atlanta and has been on the trade block, quite honestly enough. I think there is a legitimate chance that Risache, the number 1 overall pick, winds up starting. I would not be surprised at all if Zachary Risache winds up as the starter. We all hated that pick. I lost money on that pick. I am surprised that that's what they wound up doing. They didn't trade out of it or take somebody else. It was brutal, but I'm not going to let that influence how I approach this. When he's 13-1 for the number 1 pick, when he's got to beat out DeAndre Hunter for a starting spot. And if he just, like Braxton, he's got Trae Young dishing to him, and he looked perfectly competent in Summer League. If it is just he hits 2.5 threes a game, he gets to the line a few times, and he hits some transition layups, we're home. When the bar is this low, for a guy I think that could wind up starting from day one, for the number 1 overall pick, I am closest. I cannot believe I am saying this. I am closest to Zachary Risache as the best bet.
I think that's decent value. To me, I just don't think he's that good of a scorer. Maybe Trae Young just elevates him to where it doesn't matter. But 13-1 for me, I think you make a decent case, and it's probably bettable. I'm staying away personally. I just don't think he's that good. I don't think he's going to get the points, like you said. And I think I just prefer Edey.
Is there anybody else on the list that you want to talk about? It's okay if the answer is no.
It's not Bronny James, tell you that.
Not Bronny James.
How about Misi, 200-1? I mean, the Pelicans don't have a starting center.
True.
He might start. He might get rebounds.
Yeah.
You never know with that. 200-1, that might be worth a flyer.
The other one I would mention is Tajon Salon. Just from the perspective, I think there's going to be opportunity there for him, and because I think that they're shaking things up. If we get into training camp and Salon's starting, I'm going to look at Salon as a potential bet at 70-1. Not bad there. Terrence Shannon Jr. and Tristan Da Silva are 2 other names I've heard a lot, as well as Jared McCain. Khalil Ware is one that's been talked about a lot because I think the Heat want to go back to 2 bigs. I don't know if he's just going to get. I think he might start and be good, but I just don't know if he's going to get the. I don't know that he's going to have the profile of a guy. Feels like a Steven Adams pick, where it's like, yeah, he was really impactful. He probably should have won, but he didn't. All right, so best bet is Braxton Reynolds. Very boring. Plus 500 for the start, for 6-1 in the market for the starter. Zach Edey for the favorite. I am closest to Zachary Risache, but we will wait. We're going to do Price Finder with Albert Wynn, the analytics capper, and we'll see if we can find some more value. I know that he's got some more long shots on his board. He's already warned me of that one. So make sure to check out that episode tomorrow. Download the Action Network app and check out youtube.com/The Action Network. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's go.